Good evening, everyone. I'm Josh Fiala, Principal Planner at the Regional Planning Agency, the Greater Boston Area Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We've been consulting with the town of Milford on the Milford Comprehensive Plan for a little over a year now, and are excited to bring forward this evening a summary presentation of the draft plan document, which has been compiled with extensive community process for the past year. Okay. Check. Is that better?
Yes,
Good.
very good.
All right.
You might want to be back. I know. I love it.
So again, Josh Fiala with Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and we're going to be going through a summary presentation of the Milford Comprehensive Plan this evening, and we're excited to share the results of this over years long process with you all this evening. So our agenda for this evening is pretty straightforward. We'll have an overview of the plan, talk through the process and the context to get to this point, and talk through the vision statement for the comprehensive plan, but then really focus on the priority goals, strategies, and actions that have been developed for the draft plan document. We are in the middle of a current comment period, and we invite public comments from those viewing this video or in the audience. And that can be, I'll share my email later in this session. And we also have an online survey, which would invite the same comments as well. You're also welcome to give me a call. I've spoken to some of you on the phone as well. All right, so a brief overview of the comprehensive plan. We've been working closely with the Milford Comp Plan Ad Hoc Committee. You can see those members on the screen now. Involves the planning board. The planning board is the primary adopter of the comprehensive plan. They're ultimately the sort of keepers of the long-range plan of the town. We've also been working with members of the select board, the finance committee, the conservation commission, and the town administrator, who are all part of that ad hoc committee. And we thank their dedication to this process. They've spent a lot of time thinking through both how the process unfolds, but also the content of the plan. And we've met with them on a monthly basis throughout. The process has been supported by Larry Duncan in the town planning department. Appreciate his service as well. The comprehensive plan looks at the town comprehensively in terms of geography. So it's looking at really everything within the borders of the town today, and trying to consider over the next 10-year time horizon, what would like to occur from the community's perspective, from the town's perspective in terms of investments that may be needed, and also thinking about challenges that are present today that might want to be improved upon over that period. The plan is also comprehensive in the topics that we've discussed, mostly with a focus on the physical environment and built environment of the town. So that includes things like land use, economic development, housing, transportation, cultural and historic resources, the natural environment and open space, and community facilities and services. In addition to focusing on the entire town in terms of geography, we've also had a specific focus on the downtown. And the downtown has been a key geographic area that many people have been focused on in the discussion in this process. And there's a fair amount of focus in terms of the themes and goals that relate to the downtown as well. Throughout the plan process, we have organized ourselves around those topics. But as we turn toward composing the document itself, we decided to shift toward more of a thematic organization of the plan. It's not that typical for residents, unless those residents are planners like us, to think about the land use or the transportation in a town, but really it's more about the quality of life or the livability of a neighborhood. That's how people think about the places where they live and work. So we've changed and shifted the content of the plan more to a thematic arrangement, which I think helps with the accessibility of the plan itself. Here's an overall outline of the plan content in terms of the chapters. So we start with a brief introduction to the plan, talking through the purpose of it, the process and context, setting the stage much as I am verbally in this presentation in that first chapter. The second chapter goes through Milford's past, talking about key events, historical milestones, the patterns of growth and development over the town's history. The third chapter looks at Milford today in terms of its demographic patterns, important data by those topics I mentioned, and thinking about the context for the challenges which which this plan is looking at addressing. The fourth chapter looks at Milford's future with a focus on the vision statement, which was compiled using the community's feedback. So it sets the stage for that vision statement, then also shares a future land use vision map, which I'll share in this presentation as well. And then it talks through a summary of the plan themes. And then each of those plan themes are highlighted in a chapter of their own in chapters 5 through 13 in the plan. And those themes get some narrative treatment to just give context for how the theme relates to the town and the challenges that were heard through this planning process. And then the focus of those chapters is on the goals, strategies, and actions related to each of those themes. Finally, as you'll see, all of those chapters amount to quite a bit of information and quite a few goals, strategies, and actions. So we end with an implementation action plan, which highlights what we have viewed as the top 20 items in terms of the goals, strategies, and actions, which give a more focused approach to the town's implementation. In this session, one of the things that I'd love to get to with you all here is to actually do some help us vote and prioritize even those 20 to see which ones you think are the most important. So as we have throughout this process, we've maintained a project website, and that's available here. It will be available after this process concludes, and that's at mapc.ma/Milford Comp Plan, and you can go there, download any of the chapters in full, take a look at extensive videos and previous presentations that built that content over the past year, and anything else you'd like to take a look at. You can go do quite a deep dive based on materials on the website. Now just to touch on the process and context for how we got here. So we started this work in earnest in probably about January, February of 2024. Initially, we did a lot of background work, interviews with municipal leadership, department heads, et cetera, committee and co-chair or committee and commission chairs. The most public launch of the process was in May of last year, and that was with the Visioning Forum. We had a great turnout and really vibrant discussion in small groups at that session around the challenges the town faces, the vision that the town would like to see. We had, I think it was a neighborhood of 65 people or so at that session. We had a complimentary online survey to go with that session, which received about 600 responses from the community, which is a good response. And we've compiled that feedback to set the stage for both the vision statement and for thinking about goals and strategies in the plan. Those goals and strategies were refined over the fall of 2024. And then we had a series of engagement touch points with the community in the fall to continue to refine that content. That culminated actually in a November session in the same room at St. Mary's, where we had about 65 people attending. And that was a predominantly Spanish-speaking audience. With Carla's help, we had interpretation that evening as well. Since the winter or so, we've been focusing on pulling all that information together and compiling a plan document. And the fruits of those labor are now manifest in that draft document. And that's what we're excited to share with the community and get feedback on. And we have received some feedback to date, and we're appreciative of that. Here's just a sampling of some of those individual sessions with some photo evidence that they actually did occur. But we've gone around quite a bit in the town, really with the strategy of trying to meet people where they are and give a variety of touch points in a variety of ways that people can engage with this process. And I think that has been successful, and we've met with a pretty diverse and wide variety of audiences using that technique. And that includes things like showing up at some of the English language learner classes throughout the town, having a youth focus group at the youth center, showing up and discussing with people as they came in and out of the senior center. So really trying to meet people in their daily lives as they came in and about through their routines in Milford. Also note that we did do another notable item was a small business walkthrough through downtown with a Spanish interpreter to actually talk to business owners, knowing that they're very busy people and don't often have the time to show up at a meeting like this. So I'll touch on the vision statement and themes now. And the themes I think are important for me to touch on one by one because they do frame the body of the plan itself. And these are themes that did resonate throughout the process as we talked with people, and they showed up in conversations again and again. So the first was building community and bridging cultures. And that we heard from a number of directions. We think we have some solid recommendations to help the town improve upon that. We heard a lot about strengthening downtown as a center of the community. And so we do have items again that we think will help to continue. The downtown is, I think, in great shape, not many vacancies, a lot of vibrancy today, but there are what I would say for a downtown are some underutilized properties. And so we have some strategies to help to change that over the longer term and breathe new life into the downtown. Improving transportation safety and reducing congestion. This is an item we heard again and again. It's a very difficult problem to solve, but we think we have some both short-term and long-term ideas to do so. Maintaining the livability and charm of the neighborhoods. We heard a lot of community pride and a lot of people feeling really good about their neighborhoods. And so the plan isn't looking to change that in some substantial way. We really do want to maintain what people love about the town, but also add to the livability and quality of life in those neighborhoods as well. Continuing to improve effective governance. We heard that as a theme and have some ideas for how to do that. Advancing climate resilience and sustainability. Again, an important topic as we move forward in all municipalities. Milford is not separated from that need. Strengthening the health and well-being of the community. We heard that, maybe not exactly in those words, but we've coalesced a number of ideas around that theme. And we think that that is something that people are interested in, but they don't talk about it necessarily in that same way. Continuing to support a thriving local economy. We heard quite a bit about that. And that includes everything from the industrial uses, the commercial uses, the larger box retail type uses by 495, but also the small mom and pop shops and small businesses and those in the downtown center. Strengthening communication and engagement generally, both amongst community groups and community members, but also from the town to the community as well. So those are the 9 primary themes, and then we have detailed recommendations within each of those 9. The vision statement is in 4 paragraphs and 4 parts, and we show that here on these next 4 slides. And it's also, in addition to being presented in English, interpreted into Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese on these slides. I won't read it verbatim. You can take some time later to do so. But the vision statement is a step, I would say, up from those themes. So the themes are even a little more specific. The vision statement really sets the tone and the ambition for where the town would like to be headed over that next 10-year time horizon. I would say some of the highlights is that it does recognize that there's a lot that people love about Milford. And so it's not a vision that completely turns its back on the legacy and heritage of the town, but is really trying to build on that productively. And it's also a vision that we've heard people want to see not a whole cloth change, but incremental improvements. So that's what the vision statement reflects as well, is trying to set some of those benchmarks in place for what people do like about the town, but also then highlight some of those places where improvements could occur. Some of those improvements are around fostering a welcoming and inclusive environment in a number of ways. And so the vision statement does reflect that. And that was something that we heard and see in the demographic figures with the town continuing to diversify, that people want to continue to provide a welcoming posture and for those diverse residents who are calling Milford their home. And then we also see some of the themes from the themes which I just highlighted, basically defining improved civic engagement, building on the community pride, which is so prevalent, and then looking for ways to increase housing diversity and opportunities, for example. And then lastly, the last paragraph really does focus on some of the economic drivers and engines of the town, thinking about the high-tech industries, healthcare, and small businesses to support sustainable economic investments and redevelopment over time. And then also the pride that the community has in its park network and park system, and making sure that they are well maintained and a source of pride in the future as well. So those are some of the highlights of the vision statement, but there's a lot more in those 4 paragraphs, of course. A lot of what I've talked through already, as you can clearly see, is narratively based. And so one of the things we tried to make a connection to through some of the maps in the plan are making them more spatially specific and geographically relatable. This is one of the maps from the plan. It's a future land use vision plan. And a few things I would point out about it is that we hope that this type of map is reassuring, that a lot of where the concentrated investment, or where you might expect change to be happening relative to some of the recommendations, are in the places which are non-residential centers in the town today. So that's the Bear Hill area by 495, the Fortune Boulevard corridor by 495, the downtown itself. So those are areas, and then also over by the Milford Regional Hospital as well. Those are areas where there will continue to be economic investment and some change in those commercial and non-residential uses. But what you see, the large yellow swaths on this map, are the residential neighborhoods. And so those would be punctuated by the open space network and the parks, increasing multimodal connections within them, the ability to walk and bike from your neighborhood to some other destination. But you don't see on this map any new center of economic development, for example. It's really following the patterns which have been established over decades in the town. And this should be reassuring to people that what they love about Milford is largely being amplified through this planning document and through the recommendations in it. And there's not a substantial shift of gears or change in direction here that's represented. So again, these are the 9 themes. I won't go through them again, but just wanted to bring them back to the top of mind as we'll go now shift into talking through them more specifically one by one. And as we do that, I'll highlight some of the priority goals, strategies, and actions. So again, the reason why we have the implementation action plan at the end and why we're trying to focus in on those 20 goals, strategies, and actions, which we think are the priorities, is because overall, across those 9 overarching themes, we have quite a few topics of guidance for the town. There's 52 goals. There's 170 strategies under those goals and 323 actions. Now, the expectation isn't that the town will be accomplishing all of those items, but we did want to provide a more, as this is a comprehensive plan, provide a comprehensive view for the town so that when a topic does come into central focus, this plan might actually be able to provide some guidance about what direction to head in, or what actions could help those first steps be taken by the town. So it might not be that be the case that the town takes action on all of these, but it should be a useful resource document as any topic comes forward. And then if a topic isn't directly addressed in the plan, we hope that the town will be using the vision statement as a guide for how that might be thought about when a more novel or different type of problem shows up. With the implementation action plan, we do think the 20 goals, strategies, and actions which have been highlighted would set the town on a path of really meaningful incremental improvement as is desired by the town community on some very important challenges that have been identified. I'll just walk through, I won't read every word on these slides, but just walk through a few examples to give you a flavor for the types of goals, strategies, and actions that are occurring under these themes. So under the theme of building community and bridging cultures, we look at the goal of preserving and celebrating cultural diversity. This was a real source of pride in the community, but it was also an opportunity for improvement. So one of the ideas, a strategy, is to sustain and expand the community and cultural events that appeal to a variety of Milford residents, and to really celebrate that growing diversity and cultural diversity in the community and the richness of it. One of the very tangible actions that we think could help make movement in that space would be to inventory the existing community events and bring the organizers together to improve communication and coordination of cultural events. Some of those parties might include, for example, the Milford Cultural Council, the Milford Public Library, the Milford Senior Center, other community-based organizations. We think in creating that inventory, it might present opportunities where there might be an underused month in terms of that network and catalog of events, and also might point to gaps in the cultural tapestry that's represented in the community's cultural event calendar, and an opportunity to invite and celebrate that diversity that the town has, and connect with community groups that could help make that happen. So we see this as maybe, some people might not view it as mission critical for how the town's governing itself, but in terms of bringing community together and bridging cultures, this is a really important item to help make Milford feel like one community. There are other items in this theme as well. The second goal is about adding capacity for business engagement and new business development. And I'll just highlight here the specific action there is to hire a business liaison who speaks Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese to engage and better support the small businesses, specifically those located in the downtown. In terms of strengthening the downtown as a center of community, one of the ideas relates back to that cultural and event calendar and activities. So thinking about downtown as a center point for those district community and cultural events with the support of local small businesses, public art, and the events that come together. One of the things that we think would help in that regard is, as a strategy, establishing a downtown district management entity of some kind. And those are outside of town governance. Typically, they could be a business improvement district, sometimes referred to as a BID, a cultural district, or a Main Street organization, or another type of nonprofit. And that third party, which sits between town government and also the small business community, is really an important sort of glue that bonds everything together and can do things and have their own funding streams to help support the downtown as a district, support that constellation of events which can help support businesses there and the sense of community, and do things that others cannot. So we think the critical action there is to actually convene business owners, property owners, and stakeholders of the downtown to determine the shared goals and interests to see which types of those management mechanisms might be the best approach. Another very important idea we think for strengthening downtown as a center of community is encouraging mixed-use redevelopment opportunities. And those are consistent with the historic scale of the downtown, but they would really focus on better utilization of space in downtown. Previously, the town has been focused on zoning changes in the downtown for adding residential uses on the upper floors of buildings, which is, I think, an important approach. But that's different than what we're describing here. What we're describing here is a more wholesale redevelopment of underutilized properties with new mixed-use development. So you can imagine there are some properties in the downtown that are a single-story property, which is surrounded by parking, and it's on a sizable lot, and that's not fully utilizing the potential of a downtown lot. And so the mixed-use redevelopment that we're imagining through this new zoning would be something where it's a non-residential ground floor, activating the storefronts and activating the street edges, and then 2 or 3 stories of residential above that, which would bring residents directly into the downtown, add vitality and life, and then bring a new economic sort of vibrance and investment to the downtown as well. So this type of catalytical and transformative development, we do think would help the really strong foundation of the downtown today move to the next level for the town of Milford. So the critical action there is to actually initiate a community-based process to think about that rezoning. We can't, through this large-scale town-wide effort, do the detailed work to bring the community together to both build support for and comfort for that type of zoning and the specific recommendations that would come along with that. But that would be the next step in making that happen. And we've also heard a fair amount about downtown traffic safety and parking specifically. And so one of the things that we think would help a lot in that regard is a parking management plan for the downtown, which thinks about how different parking spaces are utilized, how turnover of those parking spaces works, and where the best sort of limitation in terms of how long you can park for a certain number of hours on what streets, and where long-term parking for those who are working downtown or others would be best placed. And making the parking work more as a whole system in the downtown and not just property by property. The transportation issues don't just occur in downtown, of course, but there's a lot of discussion around transportation safety and reducing congestion in the town at large as well. We have two short-term goals, or one short-term goal and one long-term goal for reducing congestion and increasing transportation safety. The short-term goal is thinking about the congestion and using funding through Mass DOT's local bottleneck reduction program that would help to both design the solution for some of those pinch point intersections and then also pay for their implementation, which we think is a great use, particularly on corridors like Main Street would be used very effectively at some of those intersections to help the flow of traffic there. In the long term, we think it's important to get cars off of the road. And we think the primary way to do that is through building out the multimodal network in the town. So you already have the Upper Charles Trail, which is a great asset and resource. Connecting more people to it conveniently, both by foot and on bike, would be great to expand the network that people can feel comfortable, safe, and convenient for getting people out of cars and onto bikes and onto foot. That's a longer term vision, but that nonetheless is very important. Milford's not alone in the previous, say, 5 decades or more, focusing transportation investment on vehicular infrastructure and roadways. We need to spend as much time and effort in the next 50 years looking forward on building out bicycle and pedestrian networks so that people feel it's less important and critical for them to be driving everywhere. So that's one of the critical recommendations that's of a longer term nature for investment in the future transportation system here. Maintaining livability and charm of the neighborhoods. We've heard a fair amount around housing affordability as a challenge in the town as well. And so this is one of the ideas to increase the livability and charm of the neighborhoods. You have to be able to stay in your neighborhood. So thinking about mechanisms to increase housing affordability in the town. One of the suggestions and specific actions here is to consider local adoption of the Community Preservation Act, CPA. It's a local property tax surcharge, which seems counterintuitive to have a tax surcharge for a household property tax bill, but it's pretty nominal in terms of the impact on individual households, 3%. It's not that big of a hit on the annual tax budget, but amassed across the town, it's actually quite a resource for affordable housing. And that can be used to support the Affordable Housing Trust. It can also be used to support open space and recreation investments. It can also be used to support historic preservation as well. So that'd be an important thing to explore for the town. It's another funding stream that can be used to enhance the efforts related to affordable housing. It also, being a part of that program, allows the town to be eligible for statewide grant funding matches as well. And then also thinking about the livability of the neighborhoods, it relates back to what I was just saying about the multimodal network, is creating more connections in the neighborhoods to assets such as open spaces, the Upper Charles Trail, and other connections is critically important. And one of those ways is to identify roadways with the most potential to connect residents to where there are the least barriers for those roadway reconfigurations. So where is it easiest, maybe with the lane widths or the roadway, the shoulders, to add a bike lane, for example. Thinking about ways that maybe a bike lane could be used, woven through town-owned land or open spaces so that they might not have to be on road, they could be off-road connections as well. So that's another long-term approach to increasing the livability and charm of neighborhoods and the assets people have connections to. A little bit of flavor of what the recommendations are relative to the theme of continuing to improve effective governance. We have heard a fair amount around the capital improvement processes, which the town has, and have a few suggestions around improving the transparency of those processes. And so one is to establish and share clear project priorities for the ranking of capital improvements, including metrics for their evaluation, and then making those more publicly available. And then making sure that a decision framework that's based upon project priorities that score and rank capital improvements is then shared out and can even have a chance for community feedback and integrated as well. And then also continuing to evaluate department structures and organization for the efficient delivery of services. And this is something that also came out of conversations with department heads and leads throughout this process. Thinking about ways to centralize shared resources and functions that may be duplicated across multiple departments. For example, departments that are dependent on volunteers could have a more centralized way to organize and schedule those volunteers in service of the various town systems, such as the library, senior center, or youth center. And the theme of advancing climate resilience and sustainability, continuing to protect the watersheds, groundwater, and improve water quality are critically important. I think the investments and changes the town has made to bring the water service under a official water department is a big move for water quality in the future. But there are other strategies which can be integrated into the town's regulations, such as low impact development principles into the land use regulations, or updating the town's subdivision regulations to require stormwater best management practices. And then a second approach relative to an opportunity for the town to leverage statewide program funding that's not currently available. The town could seek to become a designated green community, which would allow it to pursue municipal energy cost reductions through the access of grants for clean and resilient energy projects in the schools, in town hall, and other facilities that are town owned. In terms of strength and health and well-being of the community, this is where you see how we've put that into a theme, but the individual items may not have been expressed exactly in that way. One of them is overcrowding in the housing. And so we heard that quite a few times from different types of populations within the town, and it's a real concern. It's a tricky situation, of course. I think that the difficulty as we express it in the goal is to focus on that housing quality of life concern and address overcrowding, but while also preventing displacement in the community. And that's really the trick, is that people do need housing. You don't want to address overcrowding in such a way that people then don't have housing. One of the ways to do that is actually to really be clear with tenants about their tenant rights and provide information for the legal rights of renters in Massachusetts, working with advocacy organizations such as City Life or Vita Urbana. And so those types of tenant rights organizations can help provide information to people who might be living in an overcrowded situation to know what recourse they may have with their landlord or what options they might have for finding a better housing situation. Promoting equitable access to cultural assets is another thing that we heard, and specifically really highlighting the fact that we heard so much about community pride in Milford and trying to spread that community pride to all corners of Milford's population. One of the very specific action items that we recommend here is actually a newsletter that highlights important town information, news of the day, today in Milford history, and to make that newsletter available in English, Spanish, and Brazilian Portuguese. And we think that could be a vehicle for actually bringing the community together and tying it together in a very specific way. And then another item we had for strengthening health and well-being of the community was to improve access to existing resources, recreational facilities, and programs strengthening amenity accessibility and inclusiveness. And that's thinking about how the parks themselves present both in terms of physical and cultural inclusion, making sure that they're accessible, welcoming, and reflect the diverse needs of and identities of the community. And I know that one of the things the community is considering is a update to their open space and recreation plan, which would also dovetail nicely with this type of recommendation and give a more detailed focus on the park inventory and the park needs of the community. Continuing to support a thriving local economy. One of the items of that is not only just commercial and industrial investments, but investments in housing as well. And we think it's important for the town to adjust its regulatory posture relative to multifamily housing. So multifamily housing really isn't allowed by the zoning today. And so the town is, as a result of that, in part as a result of that, seeing multifamily development through what's called 40B projects, which is a statewide override of the local regulations where 40B development can effectively not comply with the local regulations, but still build multifamily housing. So we think by allowing multifamily in appropriate locations in the town, which are more purposefully planned and thought for in terms of its connectivity, its relationship to other assets and amenities, that would be a more beneficial approach for the long-term investment of multifamily in the community. Presently, what we're seeing is a pattern where multifamily through the 40B projects is starting to show up in industrial and commercial properties, which is affecting the ability for the town to maintain its tax base as well. And then continuing to plan for long-term financial resilience and sustainability. One of those aspects I've already touched on, one way to continue to diversify revenue sources for the town with CPA. Another would be to think about things like a stormwater enterprise fund, which would give a dedicated resource to support stormwater infrastructure in the town, similar to what the sewer enterprise fund does for the town today. And the last theme I have to talk through is strengthening communication and engagement. And so this is thinking about improving resident outreach and accessibility of town resources. And that would be the inclusivity and accessibility of town meetings and information through language access. So one of the things that we've tried to model some in this process is having more availability of language interpretation, having more materials available in other languages as well. And that need is present in the town, and the town should be thinking about ways to enhance the accessibility of language interpretation and translation and make it very, very easy for it to be requested and then have procedures in place to follow through on those requests. And then also supporting effective boards and committees, thinking about easing the convenience and ability for residents to engage with boards, commissions, and committees, particularly with a focus on underrepresented groups or groups that may not be as involved in town governance today, and expanding that the amount of the population which is involved in the decisions and the thoughtfulness which is occurring, and which a lot of people are putting effort in, and you'd like to see that that group and effort expand across the resident population. One of those actions, for example, would be to create a consistent resident feedback invitation that can be integrated into a variety of processes and meetings across boards, committees, and commissions. And it could be a similar consistent format that shows up at certain decision points throughout the processes so residents understand that this is the form they use, this is how they go about submitting it, and it shows up at certain critical points in decision-making processes and can be used consistently. So I'll touch on the final comment period again, just to make sure that everyone's aware of that. So we do have at the plan website, mapc.ma/Milford Comp Plan, the draft plan available online. It has been up since the beginning of April, thereabouts. And so we're calling it it's about a 30-day comment period. We're going to leave it open through May 5th of next week. And so that we can compile the feedback that's received and then talk through it with the ad hoc committee at our next meeting with them on the May 6th. We'll be sharing also on the next, I guess I don't have a slide of it. If you go to the website, there's a link to the community survey if that's how you'd prefer to connect and provide feedback as well. We have received both emails phone calls and I think about a dozen or so responses in the community survey so far. In terms of next steps, you can go to the website. Oh, there's the link to the survey. Here's the link to the survey. See that in the recording. It is kind of a long link, or you can just email me at jfiala@mapc.org. And then, as I mentioned, we are compiling comments from the community comment period, meetings that we've received, or comments that we've received in meetings. We'll compile those as well. And then the next ad hoc committee meeting is on Tuesday, May 6th. That's next Tuesday, just a little less than a week from now, at 7 p.m. at the town hall across the street, down in the basement with the planning board as a joint session with the ad hoc committee. Right now, the plan is to have a second meeting in May on May 20th. And if all goes well in terms of compiling and integrating the feedback from the community in this last round of feedback, then the May 20th session would likely be for the planning board to adopt the comprehensive plan. From there, it would be a process of, I think the planning department plans to print physical copies of the plan so that some of those can be made available to the community. And then we would also be shifting from completing the plan process to actually implementing the plan process. In the final chapter of the plan document does have some concrete recommendations around that, including the establishment of an implementation committee, which would be is a best practice really to be the keeper of this information and be the driver of moving action forward as the years move forward from this point. So with that, I thank everyone for attending this evening and or watching a recording of this online, and appreciate everyone's interest in this process. And for those of you in the room, I have some additional instruction for you, but I'll stop the recording.